Hello everyone and welcome back. Have you guys ever heard of the Normans? Well, these people were the ones who changed the course of English history. It is because of their influence that enabled England to become a major player in continental Europe. So today, we are going to take a look at the Norman conquest of England and its impact on the future of English influence in the region. Let's begin. In 1066, Harold II, the former Earl of Wessex, had just ascended the throne following the death of Edward the Confessor. He was crowned on January 6, 1066, but the poor lad had not even warmed his throne properly when it became the item of controversy. Two other men deemed themselves to be the rightful heirs to the thrones, and to the woe of Harold, both of them were extremely powerful and experienced military leaders. The first claim to the English throne was made by William, who was the Duke of Normandy. He centered his claim on the throne via his relation to Edward the Confessor, the grandson of Count Richard I of Normandy. William further supported his claim that the previous English king had promised Norman that as Edward had no children of his own, he would make William his heir. But on his deathbed, Edward had selected the Anglo-Saxon Harold, who was a member of the extremely powerful Godwine family, to be his successor. William even had a third argument that Harold had once been William's prisoner and had only been released on the condition that he would become William's vassal and would prepare the way for an invasion. When all of these things didn't come to play, William felt insulted and now prepared his army for a full-scale invasion of England. On the other side of the table, Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, laid claim to the English throne. His argument was that he was the rightful ruler of Denmark, a kingdom which had long laid claim on many parts of England, and his second argument was that his predecessor had been the illegitimate son of Alfigefu, wife of King Cnut, who had been the king of England from 1016 to 1035. He too was prepared to deal with the issue with force and amassed a fleet to sail to England in September. The new King Harold now faced two enemies on opposing borders. Initially, he had taken his forces toward the coast that faced Normandy, but Norman ships never showed up on the horizon. Meanwhile, Hardrada had already landed. The Norwegian king's initial invasion was successful. He defeated an Anglo-Saxon army led by two inexperienced commanders at the Battle of Fulford Gate near York. Hardrada was aided by Harold's renegade brother, Tostig. However, the spell of victory was soon broken, as 5 days later, Harold II met the Norwegian forces near York and inflicted a crushing defeat on the invaders, killing both Hardrada and his treacherous brother in the battle. While Harold's men were just savoring the taste of victory, news arrived that William had landed with his army at Pevensey in Sussex. Left with no option but to engage the invaders, Harold once again set out with his troops to face the Normans. Speed was of the essence, as reports were coming in that William's men had already started burning parts of southern England. Harold arrived in London on October 6th and marshaled what forces he could. His army included men from Stamford Bridge and local levy of less trained soldiers from the shires. After amassing his forces, Harold marched towards the Normans. The battle that would follow would change the history of Anglo-Saxon England. Both armies had around 5,000 men as they faced each other at Hastings. Harold's army consisted mostly of infantry, with the elite fighters being the king's personal bodyguards or housecarls. These well-trained fighters wore chain armor and used huge axes in battle. On the Norman side, the army was made up of a large group of archers or crossbowmen and around 1,000 cavalry. As the battle begins, the initial situation looked to favor Harold's army, as they occupied a small rise which gave them the higher ground, and they were able to repel enemy attacks with ease. The Anglo-Saxons used their shields to protect each other, which prevented major casualties. However, as the battle continued, discipline broke within Harold's men, and they soon broke formation to give chase to a retreating Norman cavalry. This was the moment William was looking for. As the shield wall fell, the Normans attacked with renewed vigor, and soon Harold and his brother lay dead. According to tradition, the English king was killed by an arrow to the eye, and then his dead body was hacked to pieces. After giving rest to his men, William was victorious. He prepared to continue the invasion and started moving towards London. London was protected from the south by the River Thames, and the only crossing point was defended by a fortified bridge. So to cut his losses, William decided to circle around southeast England and approach from the north, effectively cutting off the roads leading to the city. More reinforcements arrived from Normandy, and soon the important towns and fortifications of Romney, Dover, Winchester, and Canterbury all fell into Norman hands. Without a proper leader and a significant army following the loss at Hastings, most of the English nobility, and later the figurehead Edgar Atheling, the great-nephew of Edward the Confessor, surrendered. William took London without a fight, and the kingdom was his. William was crowned as the King of England, and he took the title William I on Christmas Day 1066 in Westminster Abbey. This effectively brought an end to the 500-year-long Anglo-Saxon rule. Motte and Bailey castles, a style popular in Normandy, were built all over the kingdom as Norman lords took over the land granted to them. The next item on the agenda for William was to solidify his rule, and the only way he could do that was to subdue the rebels in northern England. This included Edwine, the Earl of Mercia, and Morcourt, the Earl of Northumbria. Both of them had abandoned London in its hour of need, which made the conquest much easier for Normans. Taking over South England had proved to be relatively easy for William, but his next 5 years would be characterized by off and on fighting as he continued to expand his sphere of influence over England. In 1067, William's first challenge as king appeared on the horizon. In a turn of events, Eustace of Boulogne, one of William's allies, attacked Dover with a fleet of ships from northern France. However, his ambitions bore no fruit, and the invasion was repelled. Not long after, a rebellion broke out in Exeter, which had been motivated by William's new burdensome taxes. William led his army to the city and laid siege to it for 18 days, after which the city was captured and the rebellion put down. By the spring of 1068, William invited his wife Matilda to come over from Normandy. She was crowned as the Queen of England in Westminster Abbey on May 11th. The next threat that came to William's rule was from a Godwin, the son of Harold II to be exact. He had been in self-imposed exile in Ireland, and there he had managed to assemble a fleet of rebels and pirates. With his new army, he landed on the western coast of England at Avonmouth and attacked the city of Bristol. However, a local Shire army was mustered, and the city was able to resist and then see off the attackers. Defeated, Godwin was forced to return to Ireland. During this time, a rebellion broke out in York. The city had always been a hotbed of opposition to kings based in southern England and had often proved troublesome to previous kings in the south. This time, the opposition was centered around Edgar Atheling, who had been benefiting from both the sanctuary and the support of Malcolm III, the Scottish king who had married Edgar's sister Margaret. William once again gathered his army and marched on York. During their march, his army torched any rebellious village and town and killed any who opposed them. William built castles in Warwick and Nottingham to act as a garrison for his soldiers and to protect Norman interests in the area. Before he arrived, reports of the ruthlessness of his forces had reached York, so when he did indeed arrive, the city felt it was better to surrender than to fight back. William built another castle in the city and had a garrison installed. He also took hostages to remind the people who the real king was. This peace, however, did not last long, and in January 1069, both Durham and York were once again sacked by rebel armies. Once again, William moved with his forces towards the north, but unlike before, he crushed the rebel army. It looked like all will be well now, but a few months later, a foreign threat appeared on the horizon. King Sweyn II of Denmark sent his brother Asbjorn with 3,000 ships to attack the northeast coast of England. When they arrived, the Viking warriors joined forces with Anglo-Saxon rebels and sacked the city of York. For a third time, William marched on York, but by the time he arrived, the Danes had already sailed off down the River Trent, and rebels had fled. So, like it has happened in the past, the king paid the Vikings to go home and to send a message to the public of his intention to rule England. He spent Christmas of 1069 at York. During his stay there, William began his controversial policy of harrying the north. This was basically a scorched earth strategy, in which his army burned livestock and crops so that no future rebels would be able to support themselves in the north. Many innocents were killed in this onslaught, and there was even famine in the area. But for William, the strategy worked. The northern part of England was finally secure. Now, William had to deal with one final threat in the south. The Viking forces had been sent back by William after a deal, but the tough winter and lack of foraging possibilities had weakened the Vikings. So King Sweyn himself arrived on English shores in 1070. There, his army linked up with rebels under Hereward the Wake in East Anglia. Hereward had lost his family land during William's invasion and despised the Norman king. So Anglo-Saxons and Vikings once again combined forces and attacked Peterborough in the summer of 1070, looting the monastery there. However, the Vikings soon sailed off and left Hereward to deal with William's wrath. His rebel army continued to practice guerrilla warfare, which attracted others from England as well, including Earl Mancor. After small expeditions failed to quell the rebels, William marched with his army to once and for all solidify his rule all over England. His forces mobilized both by sea and land, and eventually he ended up building a causeway to carry his siege equipment to attack Ely Abbey, which served as the rebels' headquarters. After fortification was built around the abbey, and seeing William's might, most of the rebels either fled or were killed in the ensuing conflict. Finally, William was able to put down the last Anglo-Saxon rebellion in England. In 1072, to secure Northumbria, Scotland was attacked, and when Malcolm III sued for peace, the terms of the treaty led to the exile of Edgar Atheling to Flanders. A new age had begun in English history. The Normans were here to stay. The Norman conquest changed the social and political setup of England forever. Not only were many castles built, but the old English elite was replaced by a smaller number of Normans who had all been given land and titles by William. This furthered the system of feudalism in England, that is, granting of land by the king to his lords in return for mandatory military service, either in person or by paying knights. The setup of the church was also changed, as Normans replaced almost all the Anglo-Saxon bishops, and new stone cathedrals in Norman Romanesque were constructed in cities such as Winchester, York, and Canterbury. Although no great population took place from Normandy to England, the change in the elites left a lasting impact. French could be heard everywhere, which left an impact on the English syntax. As many lords like William himself kept lands back home, the politics and economies of the two lands became intertwined, which would have drastic effects in the coming centuries. England was finally growing into the power that would one day go on to dominate the world. So that's about it for today, folks. Hope you liked this video. Do like and subscribe to our channel to view similarly amazing videos. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to receive instant notifications from our side. See you in the next video.